forbidden arms. Those southern nights so warm will find you wondering what's to come. It's got you smiling when you're trying to sing your sad songs. That humid air's allure will leave you wanting more as you gaze into the eyes of your enchanted one. You won't know what to do but leave the life you thought you knew. But then the sun arises and you're all alone. Spooky willows weep along the moonlit streets, pedaling through reveries of Erzuli. The madness of the night will make it all seem right, as if your fates collided in the dead mystery. You know it will be hard, but reality is far when you are floating through the stars on those southern nights. Spooky willows weep along the moonlit streets, pedaling through reveries of Erzuli. The madness of the night will make it all seem right, as if your fates collided in the mystery. You know it will be hard, but reality is far when you are floating through the stars on those southern nights. I wrote that in early spring in New Orleans. And early spring, when it starts to get really hot in New Orleans, around February, there's a very magical, mystical quality to the nighttime. And you can ride your bike around everywhere, and just the world is full of possibility and hope, and you're in your t-shirt and you're still warm, and all of the jasmine blossoms and all of these fragrant flowers and spooky trees are in bloom. And I wrote this at a time when I was becoming very, very close to a friend, and it was perhaps an inopportune time to become so close to him, but maybe everything happens for a reason also. And I remember just thinking about the magical quality of the southern nights, and I would be out busking with a band and be singing a song that was sad and realize I was thinking about him or something funny he said and start smiling while I was trying to sing a sad song. And we had both talked about the magical quality of southern nights and decided we'd write a song about it. And I think it was originally intended to be a co-write, but then we ended up going separate ways and writing in different places, and so we ended up just writing two separate songs called Southern Nights, but about more or less the same topic. And there's an interesting little mistake in this song where I talk about the spooky willows that weep along the moonlit streets. And perhaps there are some weeping willows in southern Louisiana, I'm not sure, but I think what looked like spooky willows weeping to me was actually the live oak trees with Spanish moss hanging off of them. And they definitely look kind of like a weeping willow, but a really spooky version of them. So I decided that's just my nickname for the live oaks with the Spanish moss, is the spooky willows. And I think when I was writing this song, I wasn't even really admitting to myself who I was writing it about, or that I was getting too close to this friend. I know that sounds strange, but it did have a lot of potential to completely turn all our worlds around and topple our worlds. And so I wasn't even admitting it to myself, and taking more inspiration from a past romance that I'd had started in New Orleans, and how I was enchanted by New Orleans to begin with, because it was my first time I'd really spent a springtime there, and falling in love with someone at a time when maybe that was going to completely turn my life around, and it did. And I remember telling my cousin about it around the time it was happening, and she told me that a similar thing had happened to her when she went to New Orleans. And so I was thinking maybe the voodoo goddess of love has something to do with wanting to enchant you when you first come to New Orleans, or at a certain time when all of the flowers are in bloom and love is in bloom, to just completely change your life around. I think gods like to do that by having you enchanted by someone that would most topple your life if you were very, very close with them. And so that's why I refer to Erzuli, the goddess of love. I also tried to write as an early jazz song, and you can't necessarily tell from just the violin and singing, but if you have the right instrumentation, like the bass and the swing guitar, then you'll see what I was going for with the early jazz being a New Orleans style song.